Good afternoon. I'm Liz Purnell, an Education and Training Specialist with the Institute of Child Nutrition. Welcome to the Team Up Thursdays webinar on Teaming Up for Professional Standards. The Institute of Child Nutrition, along with its Applied Research Division, has collaborated with USDA to develop Team Up for School Nutrition Success. Team Up is a unique learning experience designed to enhance the operation of school nutrition programs. It provides tailored technical assistance to programs that want to maintain a healthy environment and increase program participation. As a follow-up to the Team Up pilot workshop back in 2014, a monthly webinar series was launched. It serves as a platform to further enhance partnerships and to provide an opportunity for all school nutrition professionals to discuss issues and provide solutions and best practices used by districts in key areas. The ICN has created a website for all materials and resources specifically related to Team Up. You can find the information at www.theicn.org/teamup. Thank you for joining today's webinar on professional standards, where our panel of experts will share strategies and best practices for providing effective training for small school districts. We'll also learn about the upcoming professional standards tracking tool and other USDA resources that can assist you to meet the professional standards requirements. I'm pleased to introduce our panelists today, along with a brief summary of the webinar content. Kashai Hindinya and Julie Maxwell are both nutritionists with USDA, and they will start us off today. Kashai will provide you with an introduction to professional standards and the requirements, and Julie will discuss professional standards training grants. Next, Joe Dawson, the Child Nutrition Program Manager for Alaska Department of Education and Early Development, will present information on the recent Team Up for Managers training held in her state. It was geared towards managers that operate small school districts in rural Alaska. We will also hear from Sarah Booker. She is a Nutrition Education and Training Coordinator with the Maryland State Department of Education. She will present on a newly created training program developed specifically for nonprofit private schools and residential child care institutions. After Sarah, Jessica Vasinski, Child Nutrition Specialist with the Oregon Department of Education, will share information about Oregon's newly developed three-part cycle menu training. Then we will hear from Kashai again, who will provide information on USDA resources that will assist you in obtaining and tracking training hours. And finally, I will wrap us up with just a few announcements. During today's webinar, all attendees are muted. There will be time for questions following each speaker's presentation. If you have a question, please type it in the question box on the screen. And I would like to remind you that USDA presenters will answer their questions at the end of the webinar. Now, Kashai, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you all for joining us today. So to get started, during our presentation today, we first will begin with a brief overview of the professional standards for school nutrition professionals. We will then hear from a wonderful panel of our professional standards grantees who will share highlights from the trainings they have developed in their state that focus on small districts. And lastly, we will present the available USDA resources in relation to the professional standards. At the end of this session, you will learn about the innovative ways to meet professional standards requirements for small school district operators, including residential childcare institutions, nonprofit private schools, and schools located in the rural area, and obtain resources for providing training to these small districts. And you'll also get a better understanding of the tracking, and documenting, and reporting requirements of the professional standards final rule, and how the Professional Standards Tracking Tool 2.0 and other USDA resources can facilitate compliance with these requirements. We will now move on to more of the meat of today's presentation, starting with an overview of the Professional Standards Rule. As you know, professional standards are a key provision of the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of 2010 and are designed to help advance the field of school nutrition by establishing minimum hiring and annual training standards. The Professional Standards Rule went into effect July 1st, 2015 for school year 15-16. It is the first rule to establish professional standards for employees that manage and operate the national school lunch and school breakfast programs. The final rule establishes minimum hiring standards for new state and local directors of school nutrition programs and annual continuing education and training requirements for all school nutrition personnel. The new standards also apply to the state directors of distributing agencies. So why are professional standards required? By requiring professional standards, Congress recognizes the important role of school nutrition personnel and their impact on the well-being of millions of school children nationwide. The hiring standards for new state and local directors will ensure that those administrating and operating the school nutrition programs in the years ahead have a solid foundation to carry out their duties. The goal is to select the most qualified candidates to serve in the school nutrition programs. The annual training standards will help ensure that all school nutrition personnel continue to develop their skills and expertise. We commend our schools for making so much progress in offering healthier options during the school day. Many of our kids spend the majority of their waking hours each day in the school and consume half their daily calories from school meals. By enhancing school nutrition careers, we're giving our hardworking and caring professionals the tools and training needed to create a school environment where our children are healthy, engaged, and productive learners. And now I will turn it over to Julie Maxwell to tell you more about professional standards training grants. Julie?
Thank you, Kushaila, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julie Maxwell. The Professional Standards Grants, as mentioned in our slide, include $2.6 million that was awarded to 19 state agencies in September 2015. These were competitive two-year grants, and the period of these grants were September 2015 through September 2017. You may be asking, what is the reason that we made the Professional Standards Training Grants available for states? The objective of these grants, training grants, was to assist states in developing, evaluating, and implementing new types of trainings in various formats for school nutrition personnel. This was to help school nutrition professionals, including school nutrition directors, managers, and other personnel, obtain the required hours of training in one or more of the four key areas, those being nutrition, operations, administration, and communications and marketing. Today, we will focus on new training programs and training resources that have been developed specifically with the small school district in mind. Small school districts include residential child care institutions, nonprofit private schools, and small public schools or charter schools. To begin, I would like to turn today's presentation now over to the first of our three state agency grantee presenters, Ms. Jo Dawson, Director of Alaska's Child Nutrition Program, who will be followed by Ms. Sarah Booker from Maryland and Ms. Jessica Vazinski from Oregon. Let's now extend a warm welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. Again, my name is Jo Dawson. I'm the Director for State of Alaska. We were really excited to be able to be a participant of the Professional Standards Grant, as well as our focus here, which was the new Team Up for Success directed at school nutrition managers. So a little bit about Alaska. Although we're quite large, our population is actually very small. Statewide, our population is only 740,000. Using professional standards as a guideline for district size, only 5% of ours meet the large definition, which is to have a student enrollment of 10,000 or more. 4% are in that medium size, and 89% are the small ones with 2,500 or less. But most of our students actually attend those large districts, 71% of them, which leaves 91% of the districts, all these small districts that are all over the map with the remaining student population. In many ways, this leaves our small programs without support systems that they need. There's no road system connecting them to each other, much less generally to each site that they have. They're also the least likely to have school food service directors, and we primarily see food service managers working in conjunction with business managers at our rural districts. So initially we didn't participate in the Team Up for Success for school food service directors when it was released. Less than half of our districts have directors, and so the model really didn't apply to us. Last winter, we did find out from our regional office that the manager's course was being developed at ICN, so we contacted them, and we were really thrilled to be able to work with them to provide this opportunity in Alaska. So the response from our districts was very strong. As might be in other states, it's hard sometimes to get mentors. Like many of us, everyone thinks they can be doing things better, but at the state agency level, we know who's doing a really good job. So, you know, we did that outreach. We got our mentors, a lot of participants, and if you see by these pie charts, really the folks who attended really did make up our general participation in the school lunch program. A lot of attendance by our small rural districts, and then some by our medium and large as well. And so even though this newer training through ICN was directed at managers, we did wind up with a varied cross-section of school food authority staff. We had directors, managers, business managers, dietitians. We had RCCIs there. Overall, 47% of our SFAs were represented at the training, which I think was just a phenomenal turnout for us. So one of the first steps for those of you who have participated in Team Up for Success is having this list of options to direct this interactive training with, and that's what that first list is there. Our districts in Alaska chose increasing participation, menu planning, and plate waste. Interestingly enough, the mentors, those who were selected to lead some of the sessions, they did not pick plate waste, so that pulled some people out of their comfort zone. They had actually picked food safety. I thought it was really interesting to kind of look at the snapshots that ICN has on how the directors, how they were selecting, and you'll see financial management was something that was much more important to a director, which makes sense. I mean, that the director's responsibility is in that that focus area, where with the managers, less so. So the section we got the highest feedback on was the participant training by the mentors, and this is where each of the mentors took the reins and shared their knowledge. The one I'm highlighting here was one of our most highly rated through evaluation done by Mona Morrow, who's with our Cuspic School District. They have 9 school sites across many communities with no road system between those school sites. these communities, having that separation makes training and monitoring them very difficult. Their population with those 9 schools is only 334 students, and they are CEP district-wide with a 75% free rate. And she does this with herself and 9 school food cooks. So she has a large responsibility and in making this work for her. And that's very typical for Alaska, rural Alaska schools, is having that off-site management of these programs. This was one of the favorite slides, because when she was handed plate waste, you know, she was a little intimidated by it, but, you know, getting down to what do we really mean, what are the facts, and kind of working through that process. It was a lot of fun. Here's another, just a couple snapshots of a mentor presentation. This one was done by Tanya Doobie, and her focus area was increasing participation. She's a school food service director in Naknek, Alaska. This is a single site district with 124 students. As well, they have preschool and have an elder program. Also community eligibility provision at 86%. She does this with herself and assistant. And her participation rate is 45% at breakfast and 80% at lunch. So she's done an amazing job. This was a really great match for her to be presenting on. The sessions were very engaging, very interactive. Participants left feeling understood, validated, and excited with new ideas. The most common theme throughout the feedback process from the attendees was that interaction with the mentors, with the peer participants, all with common goals and challenges. And it was really nice, you know, that we were talking about so many of the issues that the very small programs have, because they are very unique. ICN was very flexible through this process and allowed the sessions to go a bit off script if it was meeting the needs of the audience. And you know, it really showed, I think, in the overall evaluation that we received back from the participants. And one of the things I really love about this evaluation is seeing that the mentors really got as much out of this as the participants did. So we really chalk this up as being a very successful project, and thrilled to be able to provide it in Alaska. You know, we know it was new, but it really worked for us. And the process was so successful that we've been discussing how those methods that were so successful here in the office, and revisiting how we conduct our annual training to consider how we can implement some of these processes, such as seating folks in deliberate groupings, you know, with a mix of experienced program operators as well as with new, and allowing time after different sections that we train on for table talk and sharing struggles and best practices, successful measures that they're taking. So that we learned a lot as well, you know, as the state agency. That's all I have. My few minutes are up here. But if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. I think you have to type in your little box. So I do have one question here. With such a variety of attendees, how did we break them up? Because that is part of the Team Up for Success model. So originally we did break up our groupings by regions, because our regions, as you might imagine in such a large state, have very specific challenges. ICN made a few last-minute changes to those regional breakouts, but for the most part, that's how our mentor and participant assignments was handled. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Sarah.
Good afternoon. This is Sarah Booker, and I'm going to share a little bit about what we did here in Maryland. So I'm going to be building on what you heard from the first two speakers, but wanted to explain a little bit about what the RCCI and NPPS agency scene looks like here in our states. Basically, we have anywhere between 40 and 45 agencies that fall under that category. They include things like the Maryland School for the Deaf, School for the Blind, all of our juvenile justice programs, as well as several schools that serve students with special needs. Most of these agencies are single site operators. Some serve as few as 25 students and up to several hundred, but all fall within that small agency criteria. So I thought I'd take you through a little bit about why we decided that it was worth tailoring some of our material for this type of agency. And so you can see here, one of the first things we looked at was results from our compliance visits, and really looking at the types of issues that were cited on corrective action plans. And there were some differences from what we saw from our public agencies. And they also tended to be more consequential. So we saw agencies have more of a fiscal impact for these compliance problems. Another thing that you've probably already heard a couple of these speakers talk to is that the staff operating programs in small agencies tend to have multiple roles within the agency and might not have as much time to dedicate to all of the administrative tasks related to successful program operation. We've seen the responsibilities that might typically fall under one director at a larger agency be split among multiple people. And one of the problems we felt came from that was that really we couldn't get all of those people to show up for the trainings that we might offer. Oftentimes an agency could only send one person. So transferring the right information out to the rest of the agency was a real barrier. We also found that people operating those programs tended to have less direct experience with food service operations, and especially with operating other USDA child nutrition programs. And in some cases, there were some pretty high rates of staff turnover, which made that hard for an institution to develop the right kind of procedures and staff training modules to really help consistent results. So one of the last things that, I'll be honest, as a state agency, we looked at each other and had to have a little reality check at how much time we were investing in individualized technical assistance and agency-specific training as a result of the compliance problems, and recognizing that really it would be helpful if we could kind of leap in front of the problem and really try to have a more proactive and preventive approach. And while this is nothing compared to, I'm sure, what the struggles are in Alaska, you can see here on the slide the map of Maryland. Baltimore is where our office is headquartered. So trying to reach out to agencies across the state who might need extra support can get a little bit difficult when you have the Chesapeake Bay and various other things kind of in the way. So we really looked at this professional standards training grant as a great opportunity to allow us to dedicate some time and resources to, number one, really try to better understand who these program operators are, what their strengths are, what their challenges are. And for that, we decided to partner with some of our colleagues at University of Maryland that have some real skill in doing formative work, and they've helped us kind of learn more about what the expectations and the needs are of our agencies. It also helped us look at even the training formats and what approaches might be desirable to those agency reps, and also what would be most effective. So all in all, we were looking at an opportunity to increase and enhance the training and technical assistance, time and resources that we are investing in this type of agency. So this slide that you see here, I know it's a lot to take in, but this is from our evaluation partners, and I'll just kind of give you the highlight reel. We did surveys at several different time points. First off, we were really just interested in gauging how important they thought some of the tasks were related to operations, and really use the professional standards learning topic codes to drive that conversation. And then we found it might be important to have them compare not only what's important, but what they found difficult. Because I think first off, our brains go right to some of those more day-to-day operational tasks, and that might not be what is kind of a hook to get people to come out for trainings. More recently, actually earlier this month, we held a training for agencies that would be part of the administrative review this year. So it was it was just a third of our agencies, but we measured their kind of impact of the training day based on what intention they have to make changes before they go through their review this year. So we saw some promising things there. And we also were lucky enough to have somebody willing to spend some time doing more in-depth interviews with a smaller sample of the people operating the programs to really kind of tease out what some of the barriers were and what they thought would be helpful learning formats for them to help their agencies. So what we got from our partners in evaluation was what you see in the first two columns here, and I'll kind of walk you through what the decisions were based on that. So what you see on the top is that the two things that we were interested in is that combination of highly important tasks and most difficult. So you can see just to the right of that is the 5 topic areas that that hit the highest in those 2 areas, importance and difficulty. And so we really wanted to focus how we were going to create opportunities throughout this year, not just a one-time event, but throughout the year to really touch on different aspects that they had identified. So some of those we were able to integrate into our annual administrative meeting for that group back in March. We also are going to have an in-person training. It won't be mandatory, but it will be by invitation to this agency type sometime this winter. We also are in the midst of creating some job aids and cheat sheets, if you will, that agencies have asked for to help kind of filter down some of those kind of more complex resources that we have, like the food buying guide and meal pattern calculation worksheets. And you can see the next row here with operation tasks. I mentioned before, we think of them as highly important, but it turned out that the agency said they didn't find them that difficult, or they found that they were able to do the training on those without needing much support. So we haven't drilled into too much detail on face-to-face opportunities. What they wound up saying is those are easy enough for them to use web-based resources like webinars or training videos. You'll see the next kind of thing we learned here was more about the time that they had to attend trainings. And I think I mentioned earlier that sometimes we get only one representative from an agency, but they might not be the one carrying out the tasks that are the most difficult and need the most attention. So one of the solutions that we found was to create some web-based resources specific to wellness policies that was identified by them because other people within their agency needed to know more about the regulations, and that was harder for them to communicate outside back to administrators and teachers. So that's something that we recognize a need for and are busy implementing those. We also will have some web-based training videos that they identified would be helpful for them to use when conducting trainings with their cooks and other people within their agencies. So I'm going to move us forward here a little. This is just a little snapshot of some of the things that that we've used in our trainings. You can see on the bottom left corner is just a snapshot of one of the wellness policy webinars, and those are going to go live on our website within the next month. We have also kind of simplified our standardized recipe template and done some training to help people understand where the essential things to fill out are there. And in the bottom right, we're still working on refining some of the cheat sheets that they find helpful when doing their food purchasing and meal pattern calculations. So we are, like I said, working on some training videos and working with some graphic designers to make these resources rich. But that is kind of the scope of what we're doing to focus specific on this agency type. We also, I mentioned briefly the training videos. While those are not specifically tailored to RCCIs, they are going to be launched for both the public schools and this group, but we envision those launching this fall. So I will open it up to questions from here. And I don't see any questions pop up. I'll give it maybe one more minute. Okay, and on the screen you can see my email address and my phone number. If you have questions about the actual surveys that we were using, Amy would be happy to provide you some more information as well. I just see a question pop up about materials being available on the website. So we will be making some of the materials available on our public website. Everything will be available on our separate kind of internal website, so I can't guarantee a timeline, but if anybody is interested, they're welcome to send me an email, and I can try to get those out to you perhaps before we get them successfully uploaded on the website. All right, I haven't seen anything else pop up, so I will turn the presentation over to Jessica.
Okay, perfect. Let me go ahead and get my screen up for everyone. Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Vasinski. I am a child nutrition specialist with the Oregon Department of Education. I'm definitely excited to be here with y'all to talk about our professional standards grant project. I'm a very visual person, so I wanted to post a picture of myself so you know who will be chatting with you for the next several minutes. And I will be honest, this is the only picture I could find where my hair has not been aggravated by Oregon's humidity. So with that in mind, I'm going to get started. In order to determine how Oregon might best utilize our professional standards grant funds, we conducted a needs assessment. It was a quick survey monkey which we developed and sent to all nutrition directors. And after compiling their responses, we learned that about 58% of our respondents felt that they needed training in the area of menu planning, while 48% needed help with forecasting, and 49% wanted to increase their knowledge of procurement. In addition to asking SFAs about training topics, we asked them about methods of training, and found that many of them appreciated both online presentations and in-person face-to-face workshops. So, armed with that knowledge, we decided to create a 3-part training series surrounding cycle menus. We wanted to teach trainees how to build cycle menus, but we also wanted them to consider cycle menus full circle. So first, we chose to explain the reasons behind the federal meal pattern requirements. Many of our SFAs in Oregon understand that the meal pattern changed in 2012 and that they're now required to follow new guidelines related to fruit, vegetables, and whole grains, but they may not understand why those regulations were put into place. So we wanted to explain the purpose for providing a variety of vegetables, for offering whole grain rich items, and for considering calories, fat, and sodium. We did this by connecting the dietary guidelines for Americans to the school meal pattern in our first module, which we entitled Elements of Basic Nutrition. This module was a 30-minute online presentation that illustrated the importance of specific dietary changes within the meal pattern and their impact on our students. With that foundation, trainees moved into the next module. This training was actually a 4-hour in-person workshop covering cycle menus, the benefits and challenges, considerations, and steps to build and evaluate. Since this was an in-person event, we really wanted to provide an interactive and illustrative way for attendees to build and visualize the components of a cycle menu. This session received our highest positive feedback, and so I wanted to go into a little more detail of what we did. To help our attendees visualize their cycle menus, we created component cards. These cards, as you can see on the slide, were double-sided 3x5 cards with the name and picture of the item on one side and the description and crediting breakdown on the back. During our cycle menu training, we passed out a deck of component cards with different items from all 5 components, and our trainees broke out into groups and worked together to create a cycle menu. I need to go ahead and give a shout out to Ohio and their menus that move here. We used their items for our component cards, and we actually used their menus to show what a well thought out cycle menu might look like. At each step in the process of building the cycle menu, we encouraged groups to step back and evaluate their menu based on menu planning basics and considerations that we had discussed. They looked not only at whether the menus met meal pattern, but at their variety of colors, textures, and temperatures, the appeal to the student population, and the ease of preparation for their staff. The activity, as you can see, really allowed for a storyboard of sorts for them to not only see a cycle menu on paper, but to really visualize it. We encouraged attendees to take this practice back to their own districts and provided them with a component card template to use for their own items. The last module in the series was another online module which focused on procurement. Procurement and the regulations surrounding it can be a bit daunting for our SFAs, so we wanted to show them how using cycle menus could better prepare them for procuring items, putting out invitations to bid, or requests for proposals. We also discussed the nuances of farm to school and procuring local and seasonal items to add variety and interest to their cycle menus. So when we began the process of planning our training series, we knew we wanted to do 3 things. We wanted to talk about cycle menus, we wanted to incorporate online and in-person modules, and we wanted to involve cohorts of mentors and mentees. We queried child nutrition specialists to determine which SFAs they thought might benefit from taking the training series, as well as those that they really thought were excelling in cycle menus and could offer tips, tricks, ideas, and advice to those attempting it for the first time. For the in-person workshop, we asked our mentors to bring examples of their own cycle menus and to present on their challenges and successes with them, as well as their process in plotting them out each school year. We had 2 to 4 mentors for each of our 4 cohorts, and their quick presentations had a lot of impact on the others attending. It really helped attendees to hear from their peers and to have an opportunity to learn how cycle menus were benefiting nearby school districts. As part of our grant, we created an evaluation survey and sent it to all of the attendees, allowing them to answer honestly and anonymously. Our goal with the survey was to gauge attendees' understanding of the material provided in each module and overall satisfaction with the training series as a whole. Here are a few of the comments that we received. The group seemed to really appreciate the mix of online and in-person training. This was something that we not only learned through the survey, but something we heard at each of our in-person workshops. We also received great reactions to our handouts, especially our component cards. As we have all heard, and as I mentioned, each of us learns differently, and it seems as if the cards were very useful for visual learners in the group. And here is one of my favorite quotes from our evaluation. This training was a great idea. Over the past several years, I have struggled trying to figure out the federal procurement regulations as they apply to food service. This training will help us to do a better job. Thank you for putting this together. As a trainer, knowing that you have brought a little bit of clarity to something that someone has been struggling with is probably the ultimate feeling of success. And so where do we go from here? Part of our grant time was spent creating a website for our trainees with online modules as well as resource materials. We are currently creating online modules for our in-person workshop information around building cycle menus, and we're uploading all of our modules to Oregon's Child Nutrition YouTube channel. Here we'll have the ability to close caption each module for accessibility. Additionally, the Oregon Department of Education has become stricter about accessibility for all items online, so we're checking all of our resource materials for accessibility as well. And we hope to have all of these items on a publicly accessible webpage by the end of September. So I'd like to offer a quick thank you to all of you for listening, and of course provide my contact information for future thoughts and questions. But for now, I am happy to take a couple of questions today. And it looks like I have one right now. It says, how is staff attendance at trainings being tracked, documented, and archived at the site level? How is this being compiled by the districts? Well, that's a great question, and probably one that's open to all of the panelists. But we actually provided certificates for all of our attendees at each of our trainings. We provided it through email for the online modules, and then provided it in person for the in-person workshop. We told our attendees to keep those certificates and utilize them in inputting the information into their training trackers, which we have provided information to them during their administrative reviews. Okay, another question looks like, what resources did you provide to attendees? So as I mentioned, we wanted our trainees to learn from each other through the mentor-mentee relationship, and we really took that to heart for ourselves as well. So when building this training, we did a lot of online research and found so many great resources from other states. So instead of reinventing the wheel, we actually linked to many of those items. So we used resources from states like Ohio, Kansas, California, and Montana, just to name a few. We really emphasized the idea that not only can they learn from others within our state, but certainly from those across the nation. Okay, and looks like one more. How did you develop your cohorts? Well, as I mentioned, we queried our specialists to determine who we might invite to these trainings. And then from there, we actually mapped out each of the suggestions with Google Maps, which is an amazing tool, and formed regional cohorts so that attendees could work with other SFAs near them, and then hopefully continue a relationship after the whole training series had ended. So it does not look like there are any further questions. I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Kashaya for some announcements and more information. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you to all our grantees for sharing your wonderful resources for us. Very exciting work that you guys are doing. Now I'm going to briefly go over our USDA professional standard resources that we have available for everybody. Our website for professional standards has the latest information and resources. You can find the links to the final regulation and summary flyer of the regulation on this site. You can also find technical assistance and guidance material. For example, we have the policy guidance, the Q&A memo that explains the new hiring and training standards in a Q&A format. We have job description template for CMP directors. And also we have the Guide to Professional Standards for School Nutrition Programs, which was released last year. And this easy-to-use booklet is designed to help understand and apply the final rule on professional standards, provide information on how to meet training standards and where to find trainings. The guide is available as a PDF to download and also available for print. The Professional Standards website also provides information on training, such as a link to the training tracker tool, which I'll go talk about in a few minutes, as well as a link to the USDA Professional Standards Training Database, which is a database with over 500 low-cost or free trainings. The training database is available at the link on this slide. And in the Professional Standards Training Database, all trainings are listed by the key area, training topic, and the specific learning objective. For example, under operations, there are topics such as food production and serving food. The Professional Standards Training Database allows school nutrition professionals to search for trainings that meet their learning needs in one easy-to-use website. The training listed in the database includes training that is available online, includes webinars, as well as in-person training, and is fully searchable by the training categories I mentioned. Each listing contains information about the training, including how to access the developer of the training in case you need to contact them, the date, a learning objective covered, and more. It is FNS's intent that continuing education and training may be undertaken in a wide variety of formats. The trainings would also be accepted from a wide variety of other sources. So, for example, we have training provided by FNS, School Nutrition Association, and other professional associations, commercial vendors, academic institutions, such as Institute of Child Nutrition, or provided in-house by the state or local agencies are examples of some potentially acceptable sources. The trainings developed by our grantees also can be included in the database. As you may be aware, the final rule requires each school food authority to maintain records that annually documents compliance with the professional standards requirements for all school nutrition program employees. Documentation must be adequate to support to the state's satisfaction during administrative review that employees are meeting the minimum professional standards. In efforts to assist with tracking and record keeping of all required trainings, FNS developed the Professional Standards Training Tracker Tool version 1.0, which was a downloadable form. We took into consideration of all the feedback we received on the first tool from all our users and put effort into making a revised version, applying your feedback and addressing many of the issues encountered on the first tool. We are excited to announce coming soon our new web-based Professional Standards Training Tracker Tool 2.0. The new online version will provide great features such as allowing managers to enter training for multiple employees, running reports, editing files, auto-populating school contact information. As I mentioned, this is an online form, so there's nothing for you to download. This tool will show managers and or staff how many training courses and hours are taken and how many hours remain to be completed to fulfill the annual training requirements. The tool will also provide a list of trainings from the USDA Professional Training Database that users can select, and the course information and training hours will auto-populate for you, making this tool more user-friendly and easier to navigate. And I also want to mention that the tool is mobile-friendly, so you can use it on your tablets or even on the phone if you wish. And in the interest of time, I will not be doing a full demo today, but I do want to highlight some of the features. We will be holding another webinar once we have released the tool to give an opportunity to do a field demo and answer more questions about specifics to the tool and to show all the features that we have available. For now, for today, just to go over just a few highlights just to show some features. So this is the first screen, give you just instructions on how to create an account to enter the system. And once you have gone your account, the very first screen that you will see, you will be able to select who you are. Are you a school employee? Are you a state agency? And there's really not much difference on whether you're a school or state. The only difference is when you're creating your user profile. The school, you will enter in your school information, and the state agency, you'll just enter in your state agency. Otherwise, everything is same for both kind of users. So this is an example. This is a screenshot of when you're first creating your user profile. all the items that are listed with the asterisk are the required information. So when you first create your account, your name and your email address will already be filled in, and all you have to do is select what your job title is. So then you know how many hours are required for your job title. Your hiring date, so these are information that's required when you're doing your admin review, what information you need to provide. And for a manager, you could also designate yourself as a manager here. And for an employee, you could also put down your manager's information, somebody who is keeping track of your hours for you as well. So for the schools, we have a database list of schools, and all you have to do is start typing in the name of your school, and you'll see a list populate, and you'll be able to select the name of your school. And once you select your school, all the information will auto-populate for you. Now, if you don't find your school on the list, there's not a problem at all. You can add your school to the list. You'll get this pop-up window where you could add the information about your school, and it will be included in the database. And then for the state agency user, you'll simply select which state you belong to. Once you have created your user profile, you are now ready to start tracking your hours. So this is a screenshot of the front page, the front home screen of the tool. And I'm going to quickly switch over to the tool, so we have a few minutes that I can quickly show you some of the features. So once you have logged in, as I mentioned, bear with me for a second as we get logged in. As I mentioned, you're going to start seeing, for your first time, you will not see any of the trainings listed here, but once you have started recording your trainings, every time you return, you'll see all the recent trainings that you have entered. The other thing I want to point out is it'll let you know how many days you have to complete and what number of hours you have left to complete to meet your requirements. And to enter in your training, as I mentioned before, we do have a list. We do have a list of trainings available from our training database. So you can start typing in the name of the training that you want to add, and you'll see a list of all the trainings with that search criteria put in. You select the training that you want to add, and you'll notice that information about the training gets auto-populated. What you have left to do is select which key area, especially when there might be times where there might be multiple key areas. You select the one that best fits what your needs are, and then you select the learning objectives to go along with it, and you could select multiple learning objectives as well. And you save. So as a manager, you have the option to add trainings for yourself, or you could also add trainings for your own employees. So once you have added your training, you'll be able to see in your training history all the trainings that you have added. And we have made it available that we have the current school year and then at least 2 school years into the future as an option. And as I mentioned, for managers, you have the option to create an employee roster of your employees, so that you could, if you're not just a manager, if you're at a district level and you want to keep track of training hours for all of your districts, you have that option, and you can create an employee profile. And as long as the employees are in your district, you could add them to your profile, and then when you add a training, you could add it to all of the employees at the same time. We also have the capability to do reports. If you have used the first version, all the reports that were on the first version are also available. We also have access to, if you need help, as the user guide is available. We also have a training video where it'll just take you step by step on how to use the tool, and also a contact us where you can just email with questions related to professional standards using the tool directly to our mailbox. And at this time, we have 5 minutes left, so that will conclude our presentation for today. And as I mentioned, once we release the tool, we will have another webinar where we go more, we can show you all the details, all the features of the tool, more detail. And for your convenience, here are the learning code for today's presentation. And I also wanted to, in case you're not already aware, that the Nutrition Technical Assistance Branch, we have a mailbox. You can email the mailbox directly with any questions related to the tracking tool, if you have any. And then please also send any food manufacturers that may have questions with crediting questions to this mailbox. And then we also work closely with our regional offices to assist them in getting needed answers to the states and the schools through this mailbox as well. So at this time, I'd like to open it up for any questions that you may have. So we have one question that has come in. When did you say 2.0 tracker would be released? So the tracking tool is going through an extensive clearance process. We're hoping to release it this fall. If you use the Training Tracker 2.0 with the state agency, have access to review it from the web. We are we are working on giving access to the state agency to have access to all of their employees within that state. That is something that we're going to work on. Hold on, I can't see the question. Does the Training Tracker tool allow carryover of hours from one school year to the next? According to the rule, there is a number of hours that you may carry over to the next year. So that is the reason that we allowed for the option to have that that you can put in. Our school district has Mac computers, and I couldn't get the latest version to work. Any ideas? The latest version, I'm assuming you mean the downloadable version. That because the downloadable version is an access form, and it was not, they didn't have it made available for Mac. But if you can email the mailbox, I can see if there's any other tips that I can give you. Will you be able to continue to use the old version, or will you be required to upgrade to the web-based version? So this is totally voluntary, so you may use whichever version whichever tracking tools that best fits your needs. This will be, since it is online and you don't have to download anything, and it does have a lot more features and it's easier to navigate and easy to use. But if you're comfortable with the old version, we're not requiring that you have to stop using it. But this is available. This will be available to take over the old version. If I'm a manager, can I track all of my staff in one place? Yes, you can. So as a manager, you have the ability to create your employee roster. So you can have all your employees in your roster, and then you'll be able to track their hours. You can add trainings for them to your employees. The employees have the option to keep on tracking their own, but you still be able to access their to make sure they're meeting their requirements. I think that's all the questions. Did I miss?
Oh, do I have to use the
USDA tool, or can I still use my paper logs and enter in the spreadsheet? No, you're not required to use the USDA tool. That is simply voluntary. As I said, you can use whichever tool that best fits your needs. But this is one of the resources that USDA is making, offering for all users, all school nutrition personnel. Did you say that the state agency staff will have access to view training entered for school districts in our state? That is something we're going to be working on. When we first release it, that feature will not be available right when we release it, but that is on our next item list of things to do to add on to the tool. Can you clarify what you said about state agencies being able to? I think I just answered the question, so I'm not sure. If you still have questions about that, please email our mailbox, and I can further give you further clarification if I still didn't clarify it. We have floaters. How would you recommend tracking them as they move from site to site with the tool? I'm not sure how you mean by floaters. For that question, if you don't mind, would you be able to contact us on our mailbox, and I can try to better assist you with that question. I'm not sure if I understand exactly what you mean by floaters, but once they have created an account, if you mean that they go from one state, one school to the other, they can edit their information. And if they need to update their manager information, that also can be done. But again, if I'm not answering that question clearly enough, please email the mailbox, and I can better assist you that way. Using the web version, can you add specific trainings that's not listed? Yes, you can. So, and I'm sorry I didn't point that out when I was going through the quick review. If the trainings are not listed in the database, you still have the option to enter it manually. You could add a new training list, training, so that it could be included. So if you are adding it, and then let's say somebody else comes along afterwards and you have the same training, once you have added it, it'll be included in the tracking tool database, so everybody will have access to that. Hopefully that answers that question. But yes, if it's not included in the database that we already have, you still can add any training, because there's no way to capture all the trainings that are out there, and we understand that all state schools, everybody has different trainings that they do. So we definitely have made it that you will be able to enter any training, even if it's not on the database. I think that's all the questions. Again, please feel free to email the mailbox, and I will be able to assist with any other additional questions you have. And be on the lookout for announcements when we do release, and we'll be doing another webinar to go more into the features and show exactly all the features of the tracking tool. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Liz.
Thank you, Kashai. I would also like to thank our other great panelists for sharing their information on professional standards. Before we could conclude, I have just a few quick announcements. There are upcoming Team Up state events planned in Texas and Vermont for September and October. Be looking in the future for Team Up for School Nutrition Success designed specifically for managers. And remember that all of the webinars are recorded and can be viewed on the Team Up for School Nutrition Success website at www.vicn.org/teamup. State snapshots are also available on our website that provide a summary of Team Up events. This concludes our Team Up Thursdays webinar. Thanks again for your participation and have a great day.